I've been at UNC-G for 6 years, and my area of teaching is public history, museum studies. There are two pieces of it. The first one is just how it happened, that I heard about the project. I was approached by the International Civil Rights Center and Museum and the Register of Deeds office, and about finding these slave deeds, bills of sale, in the Register of Deeds office, and that they had largely been hidden and forgotten. And there was a chance to really try to make them more accessible to the public, share the stories that are in them, but also really think about how to make it possible for people to do their own family research. That was incredibly meaningful to me, and immediately I wanted to be a part of it. I brought my expertise to the project, particularly in museum studies, and so I offered the perspective of working on an exhibit and building the exhibit. So I was a consultant in building the bills of sale exhibit a few years ago. I thought it was awesome how the Register of Deeds and the Civil Rights Museum really ended up partnering with local universities and partnered with our university, both with faculty and graduate students, to help develop the exhibit. The grad students and myself were able to do research into the deeds themselves and the stories they told, and that was something that the university brought and the graduate students certainly brought. In my case, I ended up actually getting one student involved who hadn't even started our program yet. He was supposed to start in August, and here we were beginning this in May, June, but he was so excited about this project, Lance Wheeler, that I just said, all right, just join up. This is your first project. Let's hit the ground running. And he did a lot of historical research with my mentoring about what to look for, where to look for materials about the families involved in the deeds. And then I really worked with Lance and the rest of the team on then identifying, okay, on identifying which stories we tell. You can't, in the end, tell all of the information that you find in the archives. You really have to choose what you do. And so we ended up choosing select deeds and select stories and honing the stories down to shorter snippets so people could read them on the wall and really explore the deeds. So that was the other way that we helped. A final thing that we offered as a museum studies program, and there are many museum studies program and public history programs throughout North Carolina, so this is a great place to do these collaborations. Another thing we offered was really project management. How do you get from a conception of an exhibit all the way to fabrication and installation? And so we went through first a preliminary design phase in which we did a lot of research in different topics, got feedback from community members, what would interest them, tried to find out what was there. We then went into a developmental design phase in which we really started to hone down, okay, this is what we have. And then we went into a final design phase in which we created the exhibit panels, figured out how to install all of the materials in cases and that type of thing. And then finally we fabricated and installed the exhibit. So another way that universities can help is through project management. With this exhibit, what we were trying to do was make these deeds accessible to people. And so we worked to not just put them on display, but to have people really look at them, learn to read them, and interact with them. And so because of that, for us in developing the exhibit, we made that interactive piece with where people could post their own responses about why this exhibit was important to them, and actually cultivate that. So I think interactive elements are really important in exhibits. We also really curated the exhibit so that it wasn't just telling stories of the past, but that it was also teaching people to be able to do this research themselves. I know there are a lot of people with family members that they're trying to do genealogical research on. What we were really trying to do was to make the Register of Deeds office less archaic, a place where people could go in and or online and try to do research about their own families or stories that interested them. The reason I'm a historian evolves every single day. So I'll tell you where I am today. My family is the type that doesn't like to talk about the hard parts of our history. My great-grandparents came over from Russia as Russian Jewish immigrants, and they left communities that were then decimated in the Holocaust, and family members who were killed in the Holocaust. And here, they never said anything about where they had come from or what had happened to their family members. They wanted to protect my generation by not telling us the hard parts of our history. What I've been doing now has been researching where I came from, the places that my ancestors came from, and learning about towns like Tuchin in the Ukraine, a small town of about 2,000, where there were about 2,000 Jews who lived there. And when the Nazis were coming for a mass extermination, they ended up resisting. They set fire to their ghetto and let the women, children, and the elderly flee to the forests. And then they fought back. Ultimately, the Nazis hunted them down in the forest and killed all the men, and only 20 people survived. That was a story that my great-grandparents knew, but did not pass on. They chose not to, and it was only for me doing research in archives and secondary sources that I was able to learn some of that history. I was able to learn about the family members who died in that mass killing. And I was able to take inspiration from the people who resisted and how they stood up to the Nazis when they were coming. For me, that's helped me make sense of the world I live in, some of the continued racism, xenophobia, violence that exists in our society. I've also been deeply saddened that the only historic marker that's there in the town of Tuchin is one small granite stone, which says that people died. That's it. There's no other historical interpretation there that this happened. As with so many other places in Soviet Russia, there are no markers or real interpretations of what had happened during that. I then look at where I am here and look at how the history of slavery right under our feet is often ignored. Those stories are not told. Those bills of sale sit in the Register of Deeds office, getting dusty and irrelevant. And for me, it's been really important, if this is the place that I'm living, to help support efforts to bring that history to life, just as I hope that we can do that in other pieces of history that are not told. And it's one of those things where there's so little that I can do about how the history is remembered in the Ukraine. You know, I don't speak Ukrainian. I hope to visit there in the future, but I have no ties to it. But I can support efforts here locally of people trying to say, hey, this is our history that's being ignored. So that's really where it comes from for me. I think here in Guilford County, we're doing a really good job of gathering the documents, digitizing them, making them accessible. But there's an additional layer that museums, public historians can offer, which is really helping people learn how to access these materials, learn how to use them, learn about them. Does that make sense? Right now, I think that's the real leap of connecting to the communities. And so one of the things I'm excited about the project is that you're interested in trying to get these other counties to both make their deeds accessible, but then also to try to reach out to communities and do that public education.
if denied his kinship still. Bread and bone and bathed in blood, two brothers begged for light and love. White father twisting his own soul to deny what all must know. Blood and bones are what we're made of, not enough steel to reconcile. Crying out into the darkness, one sure way to feel alive. Demon mouths lined with halos, thinly veiled but no surprise. Rest assured to welcome sub thoughts of systematic lies.